tonight, we wanted to talk about what's going on with the Obama Center, its future, and really focus on the surrounding community. And you're going to hear from several folks tonight to that effect. As you know, the Obama Presidential Center has been on the city's radar since 2014. In the summer of 2015, the Obama Foundation announced that the Obama Presidential Center will be housed in Chicago on our South Side. And since then, our teams in the city have been working tirelessly to make that happen in partnership with a number of organizations, especially the foundation and many of you. So tonight we've convened to discuss what's on the horizon, and we really want to make sure that this group and all of you are up to speed on all fronts. A lot's happened since we last convened at the South Shore Cultural Center, and I can't wait till the days when we're all back together physically, but we will make do with the Zoom that we have here. If we can go to the next page, I'd like to focus on the agenda. Tonight, you're going to hear from a number of special guests, but as Mayor Lightfoot will mention, the key with the Obama Center is that we focus not just on the center itself, but on the surrounding community. And in that vein tonight, you're going to hear from commissioners from our Department of Planning and Development, the Department of Housing, the Chicago Park District, the Chicago Department of Transportation, the Chicago Transit Authority, as well as our partners at the Obama Foundation to really discuss some of the big developments that we expect over the course of this year. But before we hear from all of them, I wanted to bring our special guest tonight to the table here, Mayor Lightfoot. She promised that she would be personally involved with this project. She promised to focus on the broader community impact, and it's my honor to introduce Mayor Lightfoot to address the group.
Thank you, Samir, and welcome everyone for being here and for your hard work along this journey. As many of you know, and Samir just alluded to it, I initially sat with this group in July of 2019. And boy, that seems like a lifetime ago when we gathered at the South Shore Cultural Center. But I wanted to be there with you to ensure that your voices were not only heard, but were uplifted throughout every step of the Obama Center and OPC's development process. I also wanted to personally be involved in the community engagement so that I could hear from you firsthand the questions and concerns and maximize the cultural and economic impacts this project was sure to bring. I wanted to also make sure that I had your steer as we, as a city government, work through this process to bring this project forward. The Obama Presidential Center will be a catalyst for growth, not only in our entire city, but specifically for the Woodlawn and South Shore communities. It has the potential to produce endlessly positive opportunities for residents both far and near. But that possibility depends upon us listening to each other and making sure that we are respecting folks on the ground in those neighborhoods that are going to be most directly impacted. This project has also raised many valid concerns about the potential negative impacts to the community, such as displacement and gentrification. And it's for that reason that it's absolutely critical that we identify and focus on all the ways this project will impact the surrounding community, especially as it relates to neighborhood planning, open space, economic development, housing, transportation, and infrastructure. And that's precisely why our commissioners have been personally engaged and convening regularly with the community to make sure everyone's interests are fully represented and that we understand the concerns that neighbors have about the impact of this project. And it's thanks to your support and your willingness to convene at tables with us that have been set for now several years that we've been able to develop many initiatives, which I hope you believe and are certainly intended to be responsive to the neighbors and the community surrounding the center. And let me give you one example. Back in September of last year, after lots and lots of discussion and back and forth, the City Council passed the Woodlawn Housing Preservation Ordinance, which ensures Woodlawn residents will be the first to benefit from the economic and cultural richness of the OPC by accomplishing four main goals with Housing Commissioner Marisa Navarra will speak to in more detail. But let me highlight a few of them. First is creating new affordable rental and for sale housing opportunities. Second is ensuring residents have access to good quality housing. Third is promoting equitable and inclusive income diversity within the neighborhood. And finally, is supporting a range of economic development opportunities. All in all, this initiative and comprehensive measure will make sure that Woodlawn residents are able to keep their homes and stay around to see the benefits of OPC come to life. And I want to emphasize that. Our goal with this ordinance and our mission is to make sure that longtime residents are not displaced, that they can remain in their homes and that they have the tools and the resources to do just that. As this initiative also is to give those same residents the support they need to build wealth and obtain upper mobility by expanding home ownership opportunities and ensuring economic growth for one of Chicago's most historic and iconic neighborhoods. This ordinance is the direct result of community engagement meetings like this one. Hours and hours and hours of engagement and listening and refining and coming back to the table. And it showcases the importance of creating a real dialogue around community priorities related to the creation of the OPC. In addition to the Woodlawn Housing Preservation Ordinance, we're also making sure to uplift community plans as part of the Woodlawn Plan Consolidation Report. This report, which was adopted by the Chicago Plan Commission last May, compiles the goals and recommendations of over a dozen community plans completed over the last 20 years and puts it all together in one place. And it will further help to prevent residents from being displaced, reactivate commercial corridors to support local businesses, and beautify the neighborhood by enhancing open spaces. And I believe that Commissioner Cox is going to speak to these issues. These efforts and the many others you will hear about today wouldn't have been possible without you being at the table, providing us with candid feedback and your collaboration. And I want you to know that I, along with every other city leader on this call, have heard your voices and your concerns, and we're continuing to engage and to listen. We come to you with an open ear and in good faith to make sure that we are doing everything possible to really support and uplift the quality of life in the neighborhoods that are going to be immediately impacted by the OPC. And I also want you to know that we are thrilled that the OPC's federal review is finally complete and that construction is officially going to be moving forward. And you'll hear about those plans as well. We wanted to meet you now before any shovel hits the ground to make sure you're aware of what's planned before it happens. And empower you to keep being the ambassadors of your community by providing you with transparent facts on what's happening, what the plans are for the city, so that you have it and you're hearing it firsthand from us. So let me thank you again for being our partners in this work, for keeping us honest and pushing us to be accountable to you. That's the kind of partnership that is necessary in order to make sure that this project truly benefits the communities in which it's going to be situated. This is exactly the kind of transparency and collaboration we need in order to reap the full cultural and economic rewards that the OPC will provide along the way and truly once it's completed. I'm excited that we're moving forward after a lengthy period of time, but we need to make sure that we continue to be in proximity to each other, that we continue to listen, and that we continue to collaborate in the days and weeks and months ahead. So thank you very much from me. Thanks for this opportunity to be with you tonight. And I'm going to turn it back over to Samir.
Thank you so much, Mayor, and we really appreciate you being here. With that, we're going to pass things over to Consuela, who is our facilitator tonight. Consuela, over to you.
Thank you, Samir, and thank you, Mayor Lightfoot. So good evening, you all. This is, it's been wonderful kind of watching this process unfold. I'm going to try to get us back on schedule. We're trying to let people in, so we're slightly off schedule, but my goal and strategy is to get us out of this meeting by 7:30. So I just want to, in order for us to be able to do that, a couple of things. The first of which is, again, I'm just going to be, my role here is to, I don't have for many of you who have been in the room with me, I couldn't squeeze Elmo into my frame. So I will be communicating with you a little differently, meaning if we get a little long-winded or we get off schedule, you'll get a nice little note for me in the chat. So the first thing I want to just sort of lift up is, again, if we can all be mindful of time, we want to get out of here by 7:30. Everybody's time is of value. So we're just going to try to move as quickly as possible. A reminder that this is a meeting, it's an informational meeting, and there's going to be a lot of information, a lot of beautiful slides, really knowledgeable people talking to us. What I would ask you to do is, if there's a question that you have, that you put it in the chat. The way this is broken up in terms of the agenda is that there are going to be 3 opportunities for you to say something or ask a question. And by ask a question, I mean, use your the chat function, which is in the middle next to, it looks like there are about 90 of us on this call. I'm going to ask that you use the chat feature to type in your question, and I'll be reading them and directing them to the person that's appropriate. You know, just I ask that so that it's easy for me to get through, is, you know, once you've asked your question, kind of step back from the chat, be respectful. As you know, it's important that we all kind of just, even if we're disagreeing with something or there's a question, that we just be mindful and respectful. We will be asking that you keep yourselves muted, and that you respect the stack in terms of being patient. If I will try to get to as many questions as I possibly can, but note that we are only going to have about 7 to 10 minutes for each section. So I want to get through that. And that means even me stopping to talk. If it would help, you might want to, if you're going to refer to a specific slide, as you'll see in the right lower hand corner, there's a slide number. If you are wanting to direct a question specifically to a commissioner or a city staff member, if you will note that. Without further ado, unless there are other questions, I'm going to ask you all to keep yourselves on mute. And we're going to move through, and I think Commissioner Cox is going to start us off.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I think you can see, good evening, everyone. So many of you know about the Woodlawn Consolidated Plan, largely because you wrote it. It comprises over 12 individual plans that were done over a span of 20 years. And our job in the planning department was to consolidate those and to distill what were the defining values and principles that organized and ran through them. And so you will see the topics of housing, commerce, and the physical realm that are highlighted. This was passed by our Chicago Plan Commission in May of last year, and it's our North Star as we think of how Woodlawn should develop over the years to come. Next slide. And it was organized around these principles, and you'll start to see evidence of how this plays out in the housing realm, and I'm sure Commissioner Navarro will speak more about this. They talked about a density along 63rd Street. They wanted to not only reserve space, but they wanted to have a vision of the future of what density would look like, the kind of a density that's appropriate for the single family character of Woodlawn. They wanted to make sure that housing was of the scale and of the character that the existing residential blocks were. And very importantly, they wanted us to address displacement without displacement. So therefore, affordable housing became an important goal. On the commercial front, there was an effort to consolidate a commercial along 63rd, really to activate that corridor as Woodlawn's main street, if you will, and then to target and coordinate our resources so that small business entrepreneurs are benefiting from this. And then, of course, the importance of the intersection of 63rd and Cottage Grove, which will be the first development that we will see in the larger Woodlawn. And then lastly, the public realm, this notion that open space is important and we should be finding opportunities to enrich that through streetscapes, sidewalks, and street trees. Next. So with regard to the issue of the character, one of the tools that the planning department will be working with residents on this year is a special character overlay district, which will allow us to imagine what would happen on available land within the fabric of Woodlawn, and to come up with guidelines to create the appropriate response to this really rich mixture of houses, and to assure that everyone is able to anticipate what the future of the publicly owned, the city-owned parcels might be along the commercial corridors and in the blocks. So this character overlay district, we will begin a public engagement process to imagine what the future character of Woodlawn should be. Next slide. And a number of the principals were directing us towards 63rd Street and Stony Island, that front door, if you will, to Woodlawn from Jackson Park, and that the area, particularly from the Metro station to Stony Island, was an appropriate place to create a mixed use, mixed density district that announces you've arrived to Jackson Park, and as well a focus on a local economic development strategy. And so that the policies and agreements that emerge out of this are fiercely local and support community wealth. And then, of course, the ability to create truly a great street of Stony Island that leads to the future Obama Presidential Center. So our hope is in this next year to begin to work with the community to see what that opportunity is and create an opportunity for transformational development at 63rd and Stony Island. Next. But we also want to make sure that the reach of the Obama Presidential Center lifts up small businesses that may be a half a mile away from the center itself. And so this year, the City Council passed an unprecedented resource, $60 million over 3 years. That's citywide. In the first year, $1 million of that will be dedicated for small businesses to go in and do a spruce up and a repair of your typical neighborhood serving retail, and that application process was opened in February. We're going to be closing the first round, and we'll see the number of businesses that step forward, and we will continue 6 months from now to do that again until we have all of these storefronts filled with locally serving businesses. Next. And a project that I'm extremely excited about is at the corner of 63rd and Cottage. This is a development, a health center, Friend Health Center, which will be a complete rehab and addition to the former Cosmo Beauty building, people might know it as, that will be converted into a 128,000 square foot medical campus with a health clinic for acute care, family medicine, a pharmacy, retail, and most importantly, it is going to bring 276 jobs. This will be the Center for Friend Health, and 43 of those are permanent new jobs. And so it's been vitally important that we bring these health services into the center of community. And this constitutes the first investment. It's a $37 million investment. And this will be the first, we hope, of many investments that you will see clustering on the streets of Woodlawn. And so you will hear more about this project as it breaks ground this year. But this is what we mean by the Obama Presidential Center spawning equitable development and inclusive growth in Woodlawn. So thank you. I think that's my last slide.
Commissioner Navarro?
Yes. Hi, Consuela.
Hey, Marissa.
And hi, everyone. Great to be with you this evening. And I'm really pleased to be able to recap the great work that occurred starting in 2019 to establish a bedrock of affordable housing in the Woodlawn community. And I'll run through these goals, but I did just want to say quickly that we began this work in October of 2019 with a working group of about 15 people and Alderwomen Taylor and Hairston to really figure out how we could ensure the best outcomes for people in Woodlawn. We folks in this group were very focused on two goals. One is making sure that all existing residents of Woodlawn would be able to afford to stay no matter what changes came. And that through vacant land and vacant buildings that we were creating affordable home ownership opportunities as well for people to build wealth and stay in the community. And so we worked together on that over the course of October of 2019 to early 2020. And these were the goals that we came up with. We wanted to ensure, as noted, that we had new rental and for sale housing opportunities affordable to a range of incomes. We know that there are folks who need a great deal of help to be able to afford their rent. There are folks who are ready to buy and need the help with the opportunity to do that. So we wanted to provide across the board. Number two, ensure that the existing housing stock offers good quality housing for residents. So this was a real focus on how we help longtime homeowners there to be able to make the repairs to stay in their homes. Provide housing options to support equitable and inclusive income diversity in Woodlawn, and to support economic development opportunities. I'll turn this over to Aaron Johnson. Aaron began actually the same month, September of 2020, that we passed this ordinance. And he has really been taking the lead on now working with the Alderwomen and the working group on implementation of all of the elements that are in the ordinance. So I'll turn it over to Aaron just to run through that briefly. Over to you, Aaron.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what you can see here is the community area for, you can see is the various lots where we plan on having our new rental and homeownership opportunities, and overall where we plan on targeting some down payment assistance to help with new homeowners. The next slide, please. So our timeline since I've joined, which as the Commissioner pointed out, was the ordinance passed in September 2020. In December, we had an implementation planning call with the Alderwomen Taylor and Hairston. And then so what we've been doing since the beginning of this year is departmental planning of implementing all the different programs and policies, and engaging, working closely with Alderwoman Taylor's office and really being thoughtful about the engagement that we're going to do. So we're going to actually start our first relaunching of the Woodlawn Housing Working Group tomorrow. So some of you all will probably be joining me tomorrow in our meeting then. But next slide, please. So here's an overview of the various programs that were created and leveraged during the housing ordinance. So for current homeowners, we're leveraging the opt-in program for the Chicago Community Land Trust, which can provide additional home improvement grants and property tax reduction. We also have a long-term homeowner improvement grant. So people who've lived in the community, have been a homeowner for 5 or more years, they're eligible for a $20,000 home improvement grant. For renters, we're piloting the tenant's right of first refusal. So tenants in buildings of 10 or more units have their first right of refusal to purchasing their home. Purchasing their building. And then that comes with 60% rent set at 60% area median income for 30 years. And then for the new homeowners, we have a Renew Wood Loan program and the Building Neighborhoods and Affordable Homes program, both of which are down payment assistance programs. Building Neighborhoods and Affordable Homes are targeted for those that are built on city lots, and the Renew Wood Loan is targeted for homes across the community. And then for developers, so in the encouraging economic equity, we have the neighbor hiring plan and the local developers. So any development that's happening in Woodlawn, one, we're going to prioritize those developers who are from the community itself. But then we're saying all developers need to have a plan on how they're going to work and hire those local residents of Woodlawn. We have our City Lots of Working Family program. We also have our loan fund, which is around $5 to $7 million loan fund, which will help with the construction and make sure that the homes produced are affordable and the rental buildings that are produced in that are affordable. And we also have additional restrictions for affordability for homes that are created on city-owned property. And then our Preserving Existing Affordable Rentals program is a way to preserve those buildings that are providing those affordable rents and preserve those to make sure that we have that for a longer term. Next slide, please. Okay.
Thank you, Aaron and Commissioner Cox and Navarro. And please, if you are having trouble hearing, can you just shoot me a message and I will ask speakers to speak up. So there are, at present, again, I'm inviting you all who have questions for either Commissioner Cox, Commissioner Navarro, or Aaron. The only 2 questions that I see currently, I think is about a preservation ordinance for South Shore. I'm guessing that's to Commissioner Navarro. And Val, I need some clarification. I'm guessing this is about housing.
Yeah, thank you, Consuela. It's how does South Shore get their own preservation ordinance? What I would say is that Alderwoman Hairston was part of this process throughout, and that we did have conversations about surrounding neighborhoods. We were very focused with the time and the resources that we had to focus where we thought we were seeing the most impact and would be likely to see the most impact in the future by the Obama Presidential Center. I think if there's more community interest in talking about further conversations that come further south into South Shore, definitely raise that with Alderwoman Hairston, and we'd be happy to discuss further.
Thank you. There's a concern or just a sort of request of trying to figure out how community engagement session meetings, people will be notified. I'm going to just ask somebody from the community engagement unit maybe to answer that. We can maybe answer that in the chat. And I'll just move down to Joel's question, which I think is directed to Aaron, maybe. Are there full details about how each of the funds work? And maybe, Rachel, if you could go back to the slide, if there's some, maybe Aaron could take some time to just sort of talk about how these funds work and when are they available. I don't know if all, but if there's some of these
That pretty much covers it. I guess if you're interested in knowing more about the ordinance itself, we do have a little summary page on our Department of Housing website that provides a little summary of the ordinance and the full text of the ordinance there. But that pretty much covers our plan to ensure that we will have local community groups also helping with the outreach to making sure that we're reaching the people in the neighborhood.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Navarro and Aaron. Seeing no other questions, I want to thank Commissioner Cox and Commissioner Navarro for sharing this information about upcoming economic development and housing efforts. And I'd like to then ask if there, so I don't see any other questions. Can we move then to Commissioner Kelly, I think it is, to kick us off from, about parks and open space.
So thank you, Consuela. I think just going through the gallery, a lot of you know me. If you don't, Mike Kelly, Superintendent and CEO of the Chicago Park District. I do want to recognize in the virtual audience, our board president, Avis Lavelle, is with us as well. I certainly am been around a while and I'm longing for community meetings and not these virtual meetings, but we're going to give it a shot here. So obviously the mayor touched on it, as well as Commissioner Cox and Commissioner Navarro. I mean, this is a very important time for Chicago for a host of reasons. But I thought, I wanted to share a story that I told maybe 5 or 6 years ago at Jackson Park Fieldhouse one evening. And it really was about our former vice president and our friend, Bob Pickens. Bob was from the community. He was literally a larger than life person. He was a champion on the football field. And he also was the first African-American wrestler to represent the U.S. in the Olympics. But more importantly, Bob was a champion of Chicago's youth and really the South Side. And the reason I'm telling the story is there was a day Bob had walked into my office and he fills your doorway and he challenged me and he said to the effect, I want you to tackle Jackson Park and not a piece of it, but all of it. And right after that meeting, I hung a giant map of Jackson Park on my wall and I had to face it every day as I sat on my desk. And this is probably 2009, 2010. So you fast forward and you start to get a sense of where we were and where we're going. And then obviously Chicago was shortlisted to host the Obama Presidential Center. And then a number of informal meetings started to pop up. And we met at not only at Jackson Park Fieldhouse, but we met at La Rabida, Hyde Park High School, Apostolic Church of God, and a number of other sites that are escaping me at the moment. And of course, we had a lot of testimony at our regular board meetings. But what was clear to us from the outset is that we needed to update the South Lakefront Framework Plan. We needed to address not only Jackson Park, but South Shore. And all those meetings, those kicks started in June of 2016. And it was a 10-month framework planning process, and it wrapped up in April of 2017. And during that time, we hosted over 2,200 attendees. We had 13 public meetings over the course of the planning process. And believe me, the public provided a ton of feedback through every stage. We didn't always agree, but there was a ton of give and take and a lot of feedback. We gathered those comments, and just to refresh everyone's memories, what really was crystallized as the vision for Jackson and South Shore was that we establish a place for all, a balance of activity and nature, and that we are a beacon of the community. Now, sadly, we lost Bob in 2018, but his legacy presses on, and I carry that every day, as well as President Lavelle and the entire team at the Park District. So tonight, what we're going to explain is our next steps in the process, which includes the plans for relocating the utilities that are under the current location for the Obama Center. We're finally going to finish the track and field at Stony and Hayes, which is about 80% done. And we're also going to talk about the next projects that are going to start coming up as a part of the South Lakefront Framework Plan and some of the mitigations that were under federal review. So for that, I'll now turn it over to Heather Gleason. Heather is our Director of Planning and Development. Heather?
And Heather, before you, there has been some concerns about being able to hear, so if we can just be mindful to speak up a little bit, that'd be lovely. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Consuela. So as Mike mentioned, I'm Heather Gleason, Director of Planning for the Park District, and the Park District has several programs and projects starting this year in Jackson Park that we're pleased to share with you tonight. So first, we want to discuss some of the utility work that you'll begin to see this spring. The Park District has an electrical line, a sewer line, and a water line that need to be upgraded and relocated between Midway and Hayes. So the image on your left there shows the route of our utility work there. In the red is the electrical work, and the electrical work will include installation of new switch gears and electrical lines, starting sort of from Midway Plaisance through Stony and then down Cornell. And then the sewer line is shown in green, and that will include cutting and capping our existing sewers and installing a new pump station and sewer on the east side of Cornell. And then lastly, our older water lines that are shown there in blue will be cut and capped, and we're going to install new water lines and taps within Jackson Park. It's important to note that the work that we're showing you with utilities is going to be on park property or in public right-of-way. So it's not going to occur within the OPC site, which means that the existing track and field will remain available for use while the Park District work is beginning and continuing. We did want to mention, however, that we are going to have some roadway closures associated with the utility work in particular. The work will occur during off-peak hours, so we're not going to be constructing during your rush hour timeframes. And the utility relocation work will include rolling lane closures on Midway Plaisance, Stony Island, Hayes, and Cornell, again during off-peak hours. Additionally, the northbound curb lane of Cornell will be closed for a little bit of a longer duration while that work to put in the pump station and sanitary sewer installation, which is shown there again in green, will have some rolling closures, and we're anticipating that that work will take approximately 4 weeks. The work is intended to begin on April 1st, and we will wrap that work up in September. On the right side of your screen, as Mike mentioned, we are about 75 to 85% done with the new track and field. As some of you might remember, we began that construction back in 2018. So the left image is the existing track and field that's on the north in the OPC site, and the one on your right is the one that we almost completed, but is just to the north of 63rd and east of Stony. So we started it, however, we were asked to hold completion until the federal reviews were completed. We do have several tasks remaining in that scope of work. So as the site's been sitting really since 2018, we need to get out there and look at the current construction site, determine the condition, and see if we need to do any remedial work. So that might include, for instance, we might need to regrade the site since it's been sitting so long before we can actually finish up the construction. Other tasks include water line work, asphalt placement, installing the turf carpet, lighting, and new equipment. Lastly, we need to lay down the track surfacing and striping and perform the landscape restoration. And this work at the track and field is particularly weather dependent. So you need rising temperatures when you install turf and track surfacing. So we will need to monitor that. We hope we can start April 1st, much like the utility work, but we'll just have to see how the weather cooperates with us. Assuming that we can start in April, we anticipate that we will complete that work in mid-July of 2021. And I also wanted to just put a note in about how we're going to communicate with the community about some of these closures that we mentioned. So we're planning to post closures on our website, push out through social media. We will certainly notify all the elected officials, the alderwomen and aldermen in the area, as well as our park advisory councils. We set up a similar communication method when we were constructing the lakefront trails. And that seemed to work really well to sort of push information out to people to keep the public informed. So we plan to do that as well. If we could go to the next slide. Thank you. So we're also excited to share that in 2021, we will start the design process on 3 of the projects that are mentioned in the South Lakefront Framework Plan. These include design plans for the Iowa building, renovating the baseball diamonds north of Hayes and east of Cornell, and lastly, designing the new dog-friendly area south of the Inner Harbor parking lot that you can see there in the slide. We will reach out to the community and start having community discussions once we have designers on board. And with that, I'd like to introduce Commissioner Gia Biaggi from the Chicago Department of Transportation to discuss the transportation plans. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Superintendent Kelly, for that great memory of Bob Pickens. Those of you who know me more recently, I've been Commissioner of the Department of Transportation for about a year, but before that, I spent more than a decade at Parks, working with Mike, working with Heather, working with all kinds of folks on the call. So I feel deeply this moment of getting to this place where we're finally connecting all the dots and we're getting ready to make this project happen. You know, and one of the reasons that I love transportation is that it is the dot connector, right? The streets, sidewalks, public way, all of that runs through what you've heard us talk about. It runs through the work of planning and development. It runs through the work of the Department of Housing. It runs through parks. We're the piece that helps bring all of this together. So I couldn't be more excited to be here to talk about what we're going to do next, because I think what you'll hear about, and you'll hear from Nate Roseberry, who's been leading this project on so many levels on behalf of our department. But what you'll hear about is how we get to that quality of life picture that we're looking for, what touches the South Lakefront Framework Plan, what knits all of this park system together through these roadway improvements that are about making place, that are about having a great cycling network, a great pedestrian network, and really making it as easy as possible to move seamlessly back and forth to the lakefront, and then the balance of the park system. That's the proposition of what we have before us here today. So we're going to walk you through what are quite a lot of improvements that are going to start this summer. We'll talk about those pieces. We'll also talk about the schedule. The notifications absolutely are really critical. But this is a moment where this improvement that is here in Jackson Park has that regional citywide impact, not only in terms of the new uses that will be there, but in the way that we're able to reduce the friction between where you are and where you want to be. And where you going to want to be is in the park, in the neighborhood, all of those pieces. So I want to introduce Nate Roseberry, as I mentioned, who's been working on this project for quite a long time, and can walk us through the details of the transportation improvements and the schedule. Go ahead, Nate.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you all very much for having me here with you tonight. Really
Nate?
appreciate it.
Sorry, is there a way to speak up just a little? We're having a little difficulty
Sure.
hearing you.
Let me try again.
Sorry.
That's okay. Is that any better?
A little. Thank you.
Sure. Well, thank you all very much for having me here with you tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to talk through the transportation improvements. The commissioner said it well. We really see our improvements as a way to stitch it together and providing those opportunities for people to travel through and to Jackson Park. So as you see here on the slide, our improvements are really focused on the closure of the roadways on Cornell Drive and Midway Plaisance to allow for better connected and more parkland. To allow for that, we are proposing some improvements on Lakeshore Drive and Hayes to provide that extra capacity for the diverted traffic to make sure that the traffic stays within Jackson Park. So you'll see along Lakeshore Drive an additional southbound through lane constructed. And on Hayes Drive, you'll see 2 lanes in each direction. We'll also be focusing in on the intersections, providing new and improved signalized intersections with new turn lanes as well. And we're also thinking about those bikes and pedestrians, as the Commissioner mentioned. So you'll see 3 new pedestrian underpasses, 1 at Hayes and Lakeshore Drive, and 2 at the newly configured Hayes and Cornell intersection, so people can travel throughout Jackson Park without having to cross and interact with cars. Really, once this is complete, you can actually enter Jackson Park from 67th and Stony Island and get all the way to the Lakefront Trail without having to cross at street level. We're also taking a look at Stony Island. We know that this is the gateway to Jackson Park from Woodlawn. It's also the front door of the Obama Presidential Center. So we're looking at that, looking for improvements as well there. With that design, we're really looking to balance the needs of a lot of different users. So you will see the roadway widened a bit to the east, no impacts to any businesses or homes. It's a good question. I will use the pointer. We also, along Stony Island, will be providing a new median with space for left turn lanes and parking on both sides of the street. The improvements will also include things like curb extensions and refuge islands to make it shorter and safer for pedestrians across the street, and improvements at bus stops to try to help with bus operations along Stony Island. Just north of the Obama Presidential Center, just north of the blue box, we're also converting Midway westbound to two-way. So right now, if you're looking to get to Cornell along Midway, you travel east on Midway past Stony Island. Now you'll still be able to get there. You'll just be converting westbound Midway to two-way traffic. Next slide, please. You'll also see a lot of work, not only just in Jackson Park, but in the communities as well, in Woodlawn, in South Shore, in the surrounding communities. We've had a focus on trying to make sure that we're working on a lot of the major roadways, trying to provide, number one, a state of good repair. So we're maintaining the asphalt roadways, but we're also looking for opportunities for those spot improvements. Again, really thinking about all of our users, providing those safety improvements, providing those access improvements for all of our users. So you'll see, in addition to the work within Jackson Park, resurfacing projects on 55th, Woodlawn, Midway, Stony Island north of our project limits, 63rd, Marquette, 71st, and others. Now, some of these projects will actually start as soon as the weather breaks, and other ones will occur a little bit later in the year. We'll try to sort of stagger these as best we can to minimize impacts to the community, but our goal was really to make sure we're extending those improvements, not just in Jackson Park, but into the surrounding community as well. Next slide, please. Getting back to the improvements in Jackson Park, we are looking to widen roadways. We are looking to reconfigure roadways. That cannot be done without some impact to the number of travel lanes. We know that there's a lot of traffic that travels through and to Jackson Park. We are going to do our best to minimize delays, but we will have some closures. What we're going to do is start our work on Lakeshore Drive. You'll see work start there first. We will be maintaining at least a lane in each direction at all times. We'll be widening the roadway to the west there, and then moving to Stony Island a little bit later. We hope to wrap up these improvements in about a year and a half, allowing for the closure of those roadways and making sure that we're supporting the Obama Presidential Center construction. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Tanisha Marshall with the CTA.
Thank you, Nate. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanisha Marshall. I am the Vice President of Capital Construction at CTA. Project I'm referencing tonight is the Cottage Grove Green Line Station. Will be reconstructed to create a new vibrant community gateway for the Woodlawn neighborhood and a new urban space with a more open design, natural light at street level, which directly responds to community feedback. The project will architecturally enhance the station and make significant improvements, providing a safer, more comfortable environment for pedestrians. This project will improve customer-facing experience, including attractive new sculptural canopies, contemporary station finishes, a new elevator, and LED lighting inside the station and on the platform. CTA has partnered with the Preservation of Affordable Housing, also known as POA, a national nonprofit organization whose mission is to preserve, create, and sustain affordable, healthy homes that support economic security and access to opportunity for all. This $75 million design bid build project relocates the Cottage Grove Station House within POA's new Woodlawn Crossing mixed-use development. Design is just starting and will continue until the first quarter of next year. Then CTA will procure a general contractor in the first half of 2022, with construction scheduled to begin in summer of 2022, continuing through fall of 2024. So it's a 24-month endeavor. Next slide, please. The current elevated station has 4 large sets of stairs that extend from the station's elevated platforms to each corner of the intersection. The station house and stairs cast a shadow over the intersection, causing a dark, unwelcoming pedestrian environment at street level. In addition, the practical design of the station's stairs and elevators reduces the usable width of the sidewalks and limits the perception of safety near the station. Next slide, please. A proposed new sculptural translucent canopy at the platform features a wave that peels the canopy upwards on Cottage Grove Avenue to create a sculptural gateway for Woodlawn. The new station is integrated into the adjacent new mixed-use building, allowing for the removal of the stairs and elevators, which will allow wider sidewalks and a more natural light to reach the intersection below. The station and the new building become new beacons for Woodlawn. Next slide, please. The development project will include a new bridge to connect the existing platform to the Woodline Crossing building, ground floor retail space, access to healthcare services, community resources, and amenities. A purported metal guardrail with a gradated perforation pattern ranging from transparent to opaque has its maximum transparency in the portion over Cottage Grove Avenue, lighting the appearance of the station. Other features of the design include platform extensions to the east and west, improved signage, and additional accessibility improvements. Next slide, please. Through this partnership with POA, by relocating the Cottage Grove Station House into the Woodline Crossing Equitable Transit-Oriented Development, this creates a unique design that includes modernization through technology, lighting upgrades, and long-term benefits for safety and security. It will add economic revitality, innovation, and improved quality of life for the community. Overall, the new CTA Cottage Grove Station House will work together with POA's Woodline Crossing ETOD and support its mixed-use developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanisha. So we've got lots of great questions and comments in the chat. I'm going to try to get through as many as I can. We'll keep it to about 10 minutes. So there just have been broadly some suggestions about and desires to have this information housed in one place on a common website with updates, as well as an interest in having information submitted via text so that people can get updates about upcoming construction, meetings, any information about the development, the project itself. So the first question, it seems, is about one, and I'm not sure who would answer this, but there's a question about whether there will still be free parking. And I don't know where free parking, I'm not sure where exactly, but Coach Morgan would like to know that. I have no idea where the parking is, but could someone sort of speak to maybe it's CDOT about the parking as road construction takes place?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think he was referring to the, well, maybe not. I'm looking at a lot of different things. Look, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think we ever discussed about taking away free parking in the parking lot across the street from the track and field, right, Heather?
That's correct. It will remain.
Right. So I think that everyone should anticipate that will remain free parking. And then I saw he had another question about, will we complete the south field before, or will it be seamless on the track and field? And yes, that is the plan. That's been the plan since 2018, that the new field would be up and running and the community wouldn't miss a day of using the track and field. That is the plan.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Parrish, I didn't see your question, which was a concern about traffic issues for people who live in Woodlawn. As this gets started, can someone address this concern about traffic issues?
Yeah, we're concerned about it too. And so what we're going to we develop a traffic management plan in coordination with all the parties, all the folks that have talked today, to make sure that we limit the inconvenience and difficulty. I mean, it is going to be a lot of roadway work happening. So I think to the earlier point, it's on us, I think, to do a good job communicating. I love the idea of having a website with information and even text alerts. We do traffic alerts. We work closely with the Alderman's office to work that out. But that's going to be something that we'll need your feedback as it's going along. But I think we could do a lot to make it clear. And this was a quick presentation, right? It was a lot of information, but we could be clear about, okay, what's closing and when, and give as much lead time as possible. There definitely will be some inconvenience, but we're going to work through it. And again, your feedback along the way will make it better.
Great. And I'm going to just ask Luke or somebody from the Chicago Planning Department to answer your question about the possibility of CBA and CPD's plan for development in the Washington Park community. I'm going to skip that. Naomi is asking about the utility infrastructure and decarbonizing buildings. There's a lot here, Naomi, to unpack. So I am trying to get to the how can neighbors benefit from the next generation clean energy transformation at district scale. I don't know if anyone wants to take that question. How can neighbors benefit from the next generation of clean energy transformation at district scale?
So Naomi is a friend. So we're in constant contact, and we've talked to Naomi over the years. Heather, do you have any specific answers to her questions in that box?
We are using every sustainable method that we can. I think part of her question is about gas lines. So just to be clear about just the park district's work, so we aren't actually touching any of the gas lines. We're focused on upgrading our electrical systems to make them as efficient as possible, as well as our water and sewer lines. So those are the newer updates to our utilities. So at least with the park district's work, gas lines are not part of that. But we're certainly upgrading our infrastructure to make it modern and efficient.
Thank you. There's just a suggestion from Elizabeth to suggest that holding a training for contractors who may need support in preparing a response to an RFP. So I'm hoping somebody has noted that. How soon is the city removing Cornell Drive?
Nate, do you want to take that on?
Yeah, happy to, Commissioner. So our plan would be to put in all of the improvements I showed on the slide prior to the closure of Cornell. So as of right now, we'd anticipate that at some point in 2023, possibly the end of 2022.
Thank you. So Val is asking about high level of security and how easy will it be to access the park?
So I can take a shot at that. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't see the question directly, but so we intend to keep the park as open as possible. So we realize that we're putting a lot of information out there. You're seeing a lot of plans for construction of things going forward. But our intent is that the core of the park remains intact so that the public has, use of it for your enjoyment and your activities. Really only the areas where construction is occurring that we've gone through are really going to be affected. So we anticipate the trails to be open, the field house to be open. Those are things that we are intending to make sure that the public still has access to. Is there going to be some more to navigate around when there's construction? Yes, there definitely will be, but we will do our utmost, one, to communicate as we've talked about and make sure that we let you all know kind of what's happening, but also just, trying to keep it as open as possible because we realize this is a lot to take on.
Excellent. And to follow up that for Tanisha, is the CTA stop at Cottage going to be open throughout renovation?
So this project will not impact the bus stops. The station itself will be closed during construction for the most part, but we'll also provide shuttle service whenever there's a closure in place. But the bus stop at Cottage Grove will still be open for use.
Thank you. So the last couple of questions are really just, or comments are, again, from Wendy Walker-Williams and Felicia Dawson. Both of them really asking about whether this deck is going to be available. And I think the answer is it's being recorded. And so people will have access to it. And I think Wendy is encouraging a broader distribution. and if there will be a larger meeting in the future. I don't know if somebody wants to weigh in on this question about, I mean, I know there are going to be other engagement meetings, but I don't know if somebody else wants to take a stab at the question about a larger meeting.
I'm happy to try and take a stab at that, Consuelo. We'll make sure to post a lot of this information on the website. And in regards to a larger meeting, you know, our goal, and we'll cover this at the end here, is that we're going to keep a pretty steady cadence here. And so to the extent to which you all have ideas on larger forums to do this, please send it through in the chat, and we'll make sure to follow up and discuss that with the team.
Thank you, Samir. Okay, so I am going to move us along and trying to keep us on time. There are some other questions in the chat. I am going to ask if people could. There's a question about access to parking for construction workers, and finally a question about support programs for increasing programs at the Jackson Park Field. So if Mike or Heather, you could take a stab at answering those questions. Kihan is asking, okay, he's just expressing support for consideration of moving forward around development, and thanking the city for considering the community as a partner. With that, thank you, Aaron. With that, I am going to now, we're headed into the federal review. And so I am going to ask, it looks like, are we back to Heather?
I can take it, Consuelo.
Roseberry.
Great, thanks, Consuelo. So as the mayor mentioned, we're very happy to report that the federal review is now complete. As Superintendent Kelly mentioned, you know, the South Lakefront Framework Plan really provided the basis for a lot of this. And with the finalization of that plan in 2018, we started the federal review process. And that federal review included 3 federal agencies, the Federal Highway Administration, the National Park Service, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which totaled 4 separate parallel federal reviews. And we're happy to report that all 4 of those reviews are now complete. We were able to finalize the Section 106 of the NHPA, which is really the historic review, with the memorandum, what's called the Memorandum of Agreement, which was completed on December 17th, 2020. And this document outlined agreed mitigations that we will complete associated with the proposed project. The next day, actually, we completed what's called the Section 4F review, which is a review of conversion of recreation to transportation use, which is required for all federal transportation agencies. And that allowed for our work at CDOT to proceed. The next federal review to complete was the U.S. Army Corps permits. There's a 404 and a 408 permit. Those were both approved in January 2021. The 404 allows for the work at the 59th Street Inlet Bridge, and the 408 allows for work to be completed in the GLIFR, which is the Great Lakes Fishery and Ecosystem Restoration plantings that currently exist in Jackson Park. The final step in the federal review was the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act environmental assessment document, which we were provided with what's called a FONSI, a finding of no significant impact, on February 1st, 2021. And this review requires a review of all the environment in and around the project. So with that step, we are happy to report that the federal review is complete. There is a bit of paperwork that we're completing with the National Park Service on the UPAR amendment, which is the Urban Park and Recreation Recovery program, but that's underway, and we fully anticipate that to be done in the coming weeks. Next slide, please. As part of the federal review, the city's agreed to mitigations for both the Section 106 Memorandum of Agreement and the NEPA reviews. We're actively engaged in these activities, and we actually already have one complete and one pretty far along and underway. So you'll see here on the left-hand side, the the mitigations associated with the MOA really relate to historic review. As I mentioned, we have one complete, which is the initial field documentation task. You'll see us, others at the city, engage on many of these other tasks as we get further into 2021, including research and documentations, interpretation, rehabilitation tasks. The city's also committed to ensuring that our design reviews for the associated midway plaisance, recreation, and tree replacement occur. For NEPA, we need to secure what's called wetland credits for the wetland mitigation in the midway. We're already actively engaged in that and fully anticipate to have that done and then in the coming weeks. In addition to that, there's some construction activity requirements as part of the NEPA review. And we've made sure to weave these into our construction documents, avoiding any habitats east of Lakeshore Drive. Both the city and the foundation are committed to not removing any trees during the heron breeding season and others, as you see here. One of the ones on the bottom, and I think this is, speaks to one of the questions about access to Jackson Park. CDOT has been very happy to work with the Park District, really appreciate a lot of their input, and we've been able to work together to make sure that we can provide pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, making sure we have that access throughout all of our improvements. As Heather mentioned, it may take you a little bit longer distance to get where you need to get, but you will have that access maintained. With that, I'll hand it back over to Heather Gleason at the Park District.
Great, thanks, Nate. So yeah, just picking up a little bit on what Nate said about some of the mitigation plans. So diving into a little bit of detail on two of them that we are planning to start in 2021. So the city and the Park District will begin implementing two of the mitigation measures agreed to as part of the federal review process. This includes beginning the design process for the east end of the Midway. So we had really preliminary discussions during the federal review process with the Midway Park Advisory Council and members of the community that resulted in the very high level drawings that you see here. We promised that we would come back to the community to have a much more detailed design discussion, and that is what we plan to do in 2021. In addition, the city and Park District are also going to develop interpretive materials and carry out programs that are going to commemorate and present the cultural and historical contributions to Jackson Park from both, cultural nature, as well as its use by Southside residents and how important it is to the community. So as part of that effort, we'll be reaching out really broadly to not just consulting parties that participated in the federal review process, but also community groups, schools, other groups, so that we can develop a program for interpretive materials together. And with that, I believe that's the end of our federal review section. I believe I'm now to introduce Michael Strapmanis, the Chief Engagement Officer from the Obama Foundation. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, can everybody see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, great. It's good to see everyone. I first really, I know all this stuff and I'm impressed with the presentation. So I really think that this really sets the context for this project, and I think I also I can't help but really just thank the city, the leaders, and all the public servants that are both been presenting and then all that are behind the scenes on your incredible work. It's been a long road to get to this point, but we are here. And excited to actually break ground on the Obama Presidential Center later this year. So just thank you to everyone. And I also just want to thank everybody who's participated in all of these conversations because, I just will say, I get paid to be here. This is my job. As citizens and as community leaders, you all are volunteering, and I just think it speaks to the amount of time that you all have continued to show up. It just speaks to the love and the attention and the care that you have for your community and your insistence that you are part of the dialogue and at the table. And I just it's one of the reasons why I love this city. And love this community. So thank you for that. And in particular, that made a difference, I believe, in the federal review process. I just truly believe that having such a diverse set of voices in this community participating, not always agreeing, but always present, and always articulating perspectives on what's best for the community, I think made a difference, and I really want to thank you. So, look, as you know by now, and we can just go to the next slide to take a look at the beautiful design and how it sits within the park and within the South Side and within our city. It's the Obama Presidential Center is just more than a set of buildings. This is the building block for economic development opportunity. And you all know this, President and Mrs. Obama chose this site, chose Jackson Park as a way of unlocking the potential that they know has always existed in the neighborhood in which she grew up and they raised their family, and where the community that gave President Obama his start. So our approach here will always be grounded in that power of place. And our vision, and we've learned a lot throughout this process, is to understand how best-in-class 21st century cultural institutions and civic centers operate. That is what this is intended to be. And we want to break down silos and old paradigms. And part of the story that I want to tell here, that we just have to tell, is how when you invite a community into the process, literally 5 years, 4 years, 5 years before you break ground, how the project gets better. And I think we want to tell that story and celebrate it. Just the last point I want to make before I turn it over to my colleague, Lori Healy, who's going to walk us through our plans for groundbreaking and just give people a granular sense of what we can expect in the neighborhood. I just want to talk at the Obama Foundation. It's always Black History Month when you work for the first Black president. And how do you tell that story, which isn't a part of our project, right? Part of our mission is to tell the story of the first Black president. How do you tell it? The answer is through you, the members of our community. And so the story of the presidency is going to be presented in a way that visitors can see themselves in it, gain greater knowledge of their history and of civics, and then get moved to take action in their own communities. So you've seen the numbers before. 700,000 visitors coming each year. We think that is a conservative number. $3.1 billion of economic impact across the county, a catalyst for thousands of jobs. And I think we've already seen that catalytic impact. I don't need to talk about it anymore. It's something that's coming. It's something that's begun. And I think this neighborhood has deserved it for a long time. And so I'm excited to see it come to reality. And I know that the benefits, they start now. So we'll continue to hold each other accountable. We'll continue to operate with as much transparency as possible, and with a notion of, as my colleague Louise Bernard describes it, radical hospitality. And I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to seeing y'all again. It's been a long time since y'all have been in my face for hugs or finger pointing. Either way, I'm looking forward to seeing you again. So with that, let me turn it over to Lori Healy, and then we'll take your questions.
Great, thanks, Mike. I'm hoping it's all about hugs in the future. So can we maybe go to the next slide? Because what I'd like to talk about a little is really good in context of the overall site plan. So I want to also echo Mike's comments about how great it is to be here tonight, to be talking to the folks in the community that have really been focused on this for a long time, and to really give a hat tip to friends and colleagues at the City of Chicago that I've had the opportunity to work with for many years, and to thank Mayor Lightfoot for kicking off this incredibly important session tonight. And so I think I'm batting cleanup here. So talking about where we're moving ahead with implementation of the center. So I wanted to just say a few words about construction to kind of close this out tonight. So in our schedule, construction is going to begin in the second half of this year, starting with preliminary road work and mobilization of our construction team as early as mid-April, with physical construction to follow the beginning of September. And based on our current schedule, which we have developed in consultation with our partners at the Lakeside Alliance, it's anticipated that it's going to take approximately 4 years to complete the construction of the OPC, with doors opening in the fall of 2025. We don't have an actual date yet, but our schedule is really pointing to that as completion of this incredibly beautiful campus. I do want to say a little bit about what's happening currently this year with the awarding of bid packages. So we're in the process of negotiating, doing some preliminary bid packages for construction, and we've already started that process. But generally, I wanted to just take a few seconds to talk about the foundation's plan, which is to break up the bidding process into 3 or 4 separate umbrella packages. And each of these umbrella packages over the course of the year will contain several sub-packages. And this is really done to allow for greater opportunity for smaller companies to bid on and possibly work to be part of the building of the Obama Presidential Center. Now, as I indicated, this is going to be done in phases over the course of the year, with the early on-site site work prioritized for the earliest bid packages, and we'll continue this process throughout much of 2021. And this is something that we will continue to work very closely with our partners at Lakeside, in the community, Mike and his team, just to make sure all that information is shared in a very, very transparent way. Now, the foundation estimates that construction costs of the OPC, including the buildings and the park itself, will be nearly $500 million. And as we've agreed to with the city, the foundation itself will bear 100% of the costs to construct and maintain the grounds and the structures within the OPC site, ultimately turning over ownership to the city upon completion. And in addition to funding 100% of the capital costs, the foundation has elected not to pursue operating subsidies from the city and will finance ongoing needs privately. And that's something that we're continue to focus very diligently on as the operating plan for post-completion of the OPC. I did want to say a couple of words about some pretty important topics, one of which is sustainability. The foundation, as you know, has a significant commitment to sustainability, which really reflects President Obama's longtime thought leadership on the environment. The OPC itself has been designed with environmental sustainability top of mind and will be a LEED Platinum certified project, which, as many of you know, is the highest LEED rating available. The foundation is committed to plant more trees than are currently on site, and importantly, to increase the type and species to improve resiliency against climate change and other environmental factors and eliminate the use of most harmful pesticides. The design of the OPC will also incorporate responsible stormwater management and gray water reuse strategies to better protect the ecology of the adjacent lagoon, as well as take stress off the city's sewer and water management system. And finally, just a closing thought, circling back around with Commissioner Cox having starting tonight's presentation, the landscape plan for the OPC really restores and embraces the rich history of the park, giving a new life to Frederick Law Olmsted's vision of a cohesive, walkable, and iconic Jackson Park by reunifying the parkland, by planting new trees, increasing biodiversity, and providing newly expanded habitats for birds and wildlife. Hopefully this gives you a high-level overview of what's to come and where we are today. And as everybody I think has said, we will continue to partner very closely with our colleagues at the city on all of these issues and to really be transparent about the process moving forward. So with that, Consuela, I'll wrap up the OPC presentation.
Thank you, Lori. There are not many questions here. I want to just go back to lift up, I think it's something that both Perry Eimer and Candace Clark have noted in the comment section about considering young people, both in the context of employment, training, and future programming. There is a question about, there's a lot of information that was shared again. And so there's actually lots of kudos for the staff, the City of Chicago staff, and the Obama Center in terms of the information. It's been a lot and people have felt appreciative of that. And so I think if there are no other questions, I would suggest that we move on to Samir for next steps.
Thank you very much, Consuela. So I wanted to talk through a little bit of what you can expect moving forward. The first thing I hope you notice tonight is, as Mayor Lightfoot promised, she would be personally involved with this. She was actually attending nearly in this entire session, and also echoed the comments in terms of the preparedness of the staff and how great this presentation has been. But I hope you also saw that she brought her whole senior team here. So we had, commissioners from the housing department, planning, the park superintendent, the transportation commissioner, and senior level representation from CTA, in addition to several of us who are the most senior team members for the mayor. That's what you can expect moving forward, is a commitment from all of us to continue to engage all of you and making sure that we're hearing from you in terms of what's on your mind, but also that we're being very transparent with the developments as they advance, as we move past one chapter of this project into this next exciting chapter. So we've laid out here a timeline, and let me just walk you through some of the key pillars of this timeline. First, you have a virtual celebration and project kickoff. We do expect to be doing some type of virtual groundbreaking towards the end of this month or early April. So look out for an invitation for that event. And that's really when the work that Superintendent Kelly and Heather laid out will begin, with all of the work on the track and field and the utility work that they so eloquently laid out. That's what's going to start starting in April. And then the work that Commissioner Biaggi and Nate laid out in terms of the roads will begin in the summer. And then the work that Lori Healy and Mike Stramanis laid out with the site prep will begin in the fall. Throughout all this, we will be working on those mitigation steps that is laid out through commitments through the federal review process. And then finally, and most importantly, we will have ongoing community engagement sessions. I don't know if these stars are exactly precise. I think our goal is to make sure that every month or two, we are coming back to this forum to have a discussion as to major developments on the project as they ensue. And so if there are major developments over the course, for example, of the park work, we'll make sure to come back to this group. And whether that's at the end of April or May or June, we'll make sure that we come back to you with ample notice before any larger work takes place. We do view all of you as ambassadors to your communities. And so we hope that you can share this information and what to expect in the coming days, weeks, and months with your teams, your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues, because you have been the closest to this project. So I'd like to thank everyone. I'm going to hand it back over to Consuela so we can make sure to address any last minute questions. And I do want to thank everyone else, again, on behalf of Mayor Lightfoot and the City of Chicago, for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Samir. And so we have a few minutes. I will kind of go through. So again, I hope that the city is hearing that a coordinated communication effort to get this information out is much appreciated. And there's just a question about how can the community be of assistance to you all as you move forward with this project. So I guess maybe Samira can start. Like, how can the call assist you?
Well, I would say continue to send us, updates on what you're hearing and seeing, and if there's feedback for us if we're not communicating enough. I know Aaron just mentioned it's important for us to send out construction updates. So what I'd say is you can take this information and we'll make sure to post it online. Let folks know about it. I think it's important that people know in April there will be some utility work that starts. We don't want anyone to be surprised. And so I think that is the biggest need, is to making sure that we are communicating effectively and getting the word out there. And also that you're letting us know what you're hearing in terms of any feedback, concerns, or bits of positive feedback as well.
Thank you. And thank you, Mike, for answering the question about youth spillover and impacts as it relates to the park. What I learned more about I'm moving back. I'm not sure, Joel, if this is that a 5th star OPC number 5. I think that's just a comment that he's making. Judith wants to know, has the foundation considered a presentation about the OPC for high school students once they return to school? And there was another comment about sort of encouraging this information to be vetted into to making sure that, I think Mary had said, encouraging us to make sure that the story of the construction and the respect for the park itself is a narrative that's available to schools and children on the South Side.
Consuelo, let me take the question about students, and I'll use it to name check a couple of people who do all the work. So names that you all know or should know: Jamie Claire Flaherty, Chris Crater, Casimiro Pena, Paris Bird. These are all folks who work at the foundation, and yes, they are engaged with high school students, and really are looking to elevate high school students as leaders in their community. As you know, that's an important part of the mission of the Obama Foundation, as well as the student organizations that exist in the neighborhood. And so we are anxious to deliver content and curriculum to students, teachers, principals, and we are particularly focused in on the schools that are around the site and around the OPC. So I'm gonna miss some names, but schools like, of course, Hyde Park Academy, South Shore, Kenwood, Diet, you know the schools we're talking about. So yes, but there's always more needed to be done. And so if you all want information from us that you can then share, you know, we have the pictures that you saw are downloadable. The information that we have, you know, not everyone is gonna, you know, go to watch me on Chicago Tonight. And so that was supposed to be a joke, and the like. So I'd say work with our team, engagement team, to make sure you all have the information you need to go and get out there. And Parrish, I saw that note, and you know we know how to find each other, and someone from my team will be reaching out to you to make sure that we're engaging, because when we started this and they decided that they would place this in Jackson Park, we made a commitment to Washington Park to make sure that we would not, you know, we thought the benefits of this project were big enough that it could extend beyond just the Woodlawn and South Shore and Hyde Park neighborhoods. So to be continued. Thank you, Parrish.
Thank you, Michael. And along those lines, I want to just go back to, I think, an earlier question. I mean, you begin to talk about the extension to Washington Park. Are there other, and I think this may be, I'm not sure to whom to address this, but I know we started with I know they talked about the development plans and their connections to the quality of life plans for Washington Park. Are there other anticipated programming or planning efforts that will spill over to Washington Park that may be of interest to the folks? There was a question and it's since come back to me that I didn't ask it. So I want to make sure that I raise this question.
I can start some of that, and then I'd call on Superintendent Kelly and maybe Commissioner Cox to supplement. You know, the Washington Park community is so important to the city, and there's a tremendous amount of potential, you know, given some of the great community players there. I know Donna's on the line here. So one of the things we're working on is how the city can step up and do more in the Washington Park community. And so we are having those discussions as to making sure we can find the resources to generate more investment frameworks in that very important community. And that's something that I know Superintendent Kelly and Commissioner Cox are in discussions with right now about. And so especially as we get more clarity on where the federal administration is going in Washington, as they start passing more relief packages and we get a little more clarity into the resources we're going to get as a city, you know, you can all definitely know that the Washington Park community is a primary area of focus for us. And so we'll definitely be following up there. I don't know if Mike or Maurice, if you have anything you want to add there.
Yeah, I just from a park standpoint, it is absolutely this is not a new issue raised, right? This is something we've been talking about in our community meetings for a long time about this wave of progress and success in coming right down the Midway, right into Washington Park. I see just on my screen, I see Guion, I see Perry's name come up on the chat box. I apologize to all the folks. I only got a limited amount of people on my little gallery here, but we got a ton of stakeholders in Washington Park. And of course, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we do the same thing and build a framework plan around Washington Park and just continue the momentum? So stay tuned. We don't have a specific date or time in mind, but I think that's absolutely something that we're going to be looking to do in the future.
This is Commissioner Cox. I will say that Superintendent Kelly and I have walked from the Plaisance to Washington Park and to the DeSable with the director of that museum, and we've talked about how to make the physical connection real and make the campus of the DeSable Museum a destination. So we've already started to try to see what the connections that can be made, but we're in the very, very early stages of trying to understand what that is, but it is squarely focused on Washington Park.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox.
Can I just put an apostrophe on this too? When you're in the park business, this is like really, really, really exciting stuff when people are taking notice, because park people, we want great things for all our parks, and we want to invest in all our parks. But when you're in Chicago, when you have over 600 parks, it's a challenge. Anybody who's been in any of our budget hearings knows we just don't have enough money. But when you start to get this type of interest and these great minds and all this support on a call or on a virtual meeting, there's a lot of power in that. So I think there's very, very exciting things to come to Washington Park.
Awesome. So there's lots of kudos. Looks like DeSable is ready and able to support the OPC as well as the Southside Wolfpack Youth Football and Cheering Organization. Alice Bonet is sort of just supporting that. In fact, there's been a lot of community engagement and around this question related to the park and the development around Jackson Park. There was a question about the golf course and the status of that proposal. Is there an update?
Look, from a park standpoint, it just sort of dovetails from what I just said. I can't even tell you how many community meetings I've done on it. If you're asking the superintendent or President Lavelle, we're bullish. We want this golf course. We want to invest in all our golf courses. We think it's a super exciting project, but you don't do it without community support, elected official support, and a lot of private fundraising. I mean, that's the only way to get it done. I think it's important that we celebrate today and where we're going in the next month to break ground on OPC, and I think stay tuned on the golf course, and hopefully one day we can make it a reality.
Excellent. So if there are no other questions or concerns, there's a raised hand. I don't know who that is. The only way I can sort of see you is if you enter your question in the chat. Otherwise, I want to thank everybody for a very informative and productive meeting and evening. I love it when we get to end on time and if not earlier. With that, I'd like to just close the meeting and to invite you all to stay tuned for the follow-up, the next steps and the follow-up meeting that is to come. So thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. And we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.